Call our briefing session to order. The first order of business we've got is tonight is to discuss the agenda items. City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight on your consent agenda, item 4A are the minutes for the April 3rd City Council meeting. Item 4B is a resolution authorizing the purchase of fuel from Martin Eagle Oil Company. This is through a Tarrant County contract. We estimate that over the year it'll be about $352,000. That is split up over 2 fiscal years. We buy about 76,000 gallons a year of regular unleaded gasoline and 49,000 gallons of ultra-low sulfur diesel fuel. The pricing on the fuel is benchmarked to the Oil Price Information Service. So it fluctuates, but then they either give us a small markup or a small discount. As you can see on the unleaded gasoline, the markup is actually slightly lower than it was under the previous contract. The diesel is still the same. Item 4C is a resolution authorizing procurement of cellular services from Celco Partnership. Celco has a contract through the Texas Department of Information Resources Cooperative Purchasing Agreement, and so we're piggybacking on that agreement. This is for all of our wireless and cell services. That includes a number of things, including the MDTs, the SCADA system, and things like that. So this contract will be for 1 year under that contract with Celco, or through the DIR.
Kevin, do you know if they offer discounted cell service to employees for their personal phones?
They do. I thought that yes, they do.
Yeah, I know. When I worked, the carrier used to do that, so it's a little perk for the employees if they choose to go with Verizon.
Yeah, and did they ever, like, I know that you went with the Texas Department of Information Resources contract, but, you know, they need to be checking too with other companies because they will, as you know, go down to compete. You don't have to stay with those huge contracts. You need to at least ask.
Well, we do when we're looking at the pricing. Our purchasing manager looks at the different options that are available out there and chooses the best one that's available.
Yeah, but I'm talking about calling and talking to them because you'll find out that they won't always print the lowest price. That they will go down, negotiate. I think we saw that on banking, didn't we, Richard?
Yeah, it would, I think this would require that to be bid out, have a formal bid process.
This one, well,
It's over $50,000.
we didn't do it, did we?
Because we're going through the cooperative purchasing agreement, so that does not mean it does not have to be bid out when we go through a co-op. Because they bid it, the Texas Department of Information Resources bids it out, and then they go with the best provider, which gives them a bulk discount because they are then able to contract with other municipalities around the state.
And I understand that. I just think that sometimes I ought to pick up the phone and call because sometimes they will do it, break out and do it. And I know at one time we had a couple of AT&T executives that lived here.
But the thing is we can't just call and verbally bid it. We would have to put out a request for bids. It would have to be a formal process.
Okay. I just think we should do that sometimes. I know that we've got on this bid board thing, and we were just talking about Brunswick as our purchasing agent. I'm not totally comfortable that we always just do that bid board thing. That's a surefire way to get away from ever finding out if there's something else out there.
Well, we can do that. A lot of times on these contracts, though, when they are bidding for a state contract, they're going to give their best price because they know they can get a lot of other contracts with it. And so there is a time and effort that goes into our staff time and attorney time to review a request for bids and put out a bid package as well that we have to factor in. And then with our requirements for liability insurance and other things like that too, not everyone is able to meet a contract.
I think AT&T could. That's what
Well,
I'm
this is
saying.
Verizon.
I'm very clear that it's Verizon. I'm saying their competitor whose home office is in downtown Dallas, my past employer. I'm saying that I think they ought to, that sometimes we ought to go outside the parameters, because I think they would. Just like we found out that a bank would, that heretofore we didn't know about. So, and I do think that they would, and maybe they are giving a price for the state, whereas they give a different one for, I mean, what, we're no,
Well, the banking thing is a little bit different because there's no by-board contract. Each city has its own unique depository requirements, et cetera. And you have to customize, bid that out. You don't really have a choice.
understand, but I just think that we sometimes should do that. We should consider that on some of our bids, than just being lulled into going with the bid board all the
Well,
time.
we do bid a lot of different services and products too, but on things like this where we think it makes best sense and we do review the different contracts, you know, those kinds of things that are more generic to the state, you're probably gonna get a better price when it's a state contract. It's things that are more localized, as Richard's alluded to with banking, yeah, we're gonna bid that out because we're not gonna be able to get a state contract, we're not gonna be able to get good prices,
But
but
you just
we'll
said-
keep it in mind.
Yeah, because you just said localized. AT&T's headquarters right here.
Okay, item 5A is to amend ordinance number 2318, which is authorizes the number of civil service positions for firefighting for the fire department. What we're asking is to amend that ordinance right now, because we are under civil service, we have to have an ordinance that allocates the exact number of positions. We're, under our ordinance, we have 33 firefighter classified positions. What we want to do is up that to 37. The additional 4 positions would not be funded, but what it would do is give us the ability then to hire someone when we know that we're going to have a vacancy in the department. But right now, we have to wait till we have a vacancy to be able to hire someone. And if we know we're going to have it, like with a retirement or something like that, we can get someone hired, bring them in, get them trained, and then they're on shift, ready to go as soon as the other person leaves. Right now, we have 1 vacancy, and we know we have an impending retirement, so we know we're going to have 2 positions in the next 3 months. And so it's for that reason, too, that we would like to go ahead and be able to hire 2 people so that when we have a retirement, we're not missing a beat. Again, they're not funded, they will not be budgeted positions. Item 4B is a resolution authorizing implementation of the retention and stability bonus policy. This is as we discussed with you the last meeting. The parameters of that policy are that it would only go into effect if we have more than 4 vacancies. Newly authorized positions would not be counted as a vacant position for the first 12 months. The bonuses that would be paid would come from the cost savings incurred during the previous fiscal year, and it would deduct all personnel costs, including overtime and certification pay, and then 1/2 of those savings would be used as the individual bonus, and that would be paid to eligible police officers who were employed as of October 1 of the fiscal year.
City Manager?
One-
I would like to make an amendment to section 2, strike effective immediately. Just think that that's, it's ambiguous, but I'd like to replace it with is, the first disbursement shall be made October 2018 from the amount savings of fiscal year 2017. Just to have it more.
That's in
precise.
place of section 2 in the resolution?
Yeah, effective immediately to be replaced with that verbiage. Effective immediately, it
The
referenced
policy
all
would
that
be
ahead of
effective,
it, but I would just
but
like
the
that to
first
be.
payment would be after.
Yeah, it doesn't change the ordinance, it makes it clearer in the implementation of it in that section.
Bobby?
Let me see her language, and I understand what she's saying. So, if we just added what, the resolution is effective, so the policy is effective, but the first payment, the disbursement would not be made. We added your language to this amendment.
From my understanding, this doesn't change any of the procedures.
Right,
So-
if we just add what you have, what you pro-offered to what's already here, the
Uh-huh.
resolution would be effective,
Okay.
so the policy's
Okay,
effective, but
so,
the first
so we don't need
payment.
to, we don't need to strike effective immediately.
Right,
I
and
see
then
that.
we'll just add your language.
Okay, I see that.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Can I steal it?
Yeah.
I can write it down.
Yeah, you might want to write it better. There's some words
Okay, anything else on that? Okay,
Item 5C is a resolution finding that Encore Electric Delivery Company's application for a distribution cost recovery factor should be denied, and finding that the city's rate case will go forward through the steering committee of cities served by Encore. So this is very typical what we've done in the past with Encore and with Atmos, where they filed a rate case seeking an additional $19 million in revenues. All of the Encore cities will review that rate case and contest it before the Public Utilities Commission. And then usually what happens is that we get some settlement or some difference that we as the cities and Encore will agree to, and then we would come back at some later date with approval of that. We just did that with Atmos not too long ago. But we do have to approve a resolution to deny it, and that has to be done within 60 days, or else it will go into effect, at least from our standpoint. That's all we have.
okay, in the work session, item number 2A is to receive a presentation from the North Central Texas Council of Governments Mobility 2045 Plan and discuss passenger rail investment.
Mayor and Council, I have the pleasure of introducing Sarah Chatterdon. She is the Program Manager for Transit Planning with the North Central Texas Council of Governments. And she's here tonight to speak about Mobility 2045 and possible rail opportunities. So I'll give it over to Sarah.
Cassidy, and thank you, Mayor and Council, for having me here this evening. As Cassidy mentioned, my name is Sarah Chatterdon. I am a program manager for transit planning at the North Central Texas Council of Governments. And I'm going to give a short presentation about plans for commuter rail at the regional level. And I'm going to focus on a rail line serving Duncanville in our long-range plan. For those of you not familiar with the North Central Texas Council of Governments, our transportation department, which I'm a part of, is staff to the Regional Transportation Council. And the Regional Transportation Council sets transportation policy for the region, and I'll show you a map of that in a moment. They have been designated as the Metropolitan Planning Organization, which just means the agency in charge of transportation planning for a big region since 1974. And you all know how complex our region is, and our transportation system is equally complex. And we plan for all transportation modes, both in the near term and in the long term, which is, I'm focusing on the long term today. And this map shows our planning region in pink for transportation planning. And you can see Dallas County is included here. The Council of Governments actually is a bigger agency, has a lot of different services, but today I'm just talking about transportation planning, which is focusing on the pink area. Our region is large and growing larger. This map provides a snapshot of congestion, which is across the bottom, and population along the left axis. And what you can see is over the last few recent years, we have been jumping in population. I'm sure you are all experiencing that. But what's not happening is an equal increase in congestion. Especially in recent years, this figure is just for the roadway investment, but there's been also a lot of transit investment with additional services coming online. And all of those things work together to accommodate population growth without significant increases in congestion. And looking to the future, we want to stay in that position. We want to keep growing without congestion getting worse. And we are looking to use all sorts of tools to keep us moving. Cars, transit, bicycles, pedestrians, aviation, and freight. We plan for all of those at the Council of Governments. Right now, as Chastity mentioned, we're in the middle of updating this long-range plan, and we're selecting the policies, programs, and projects that will keep our region moving. This is just a general sum up of the goals that we are pursuing in developing 2045: mobility, quality of life, system sustainability, and implementation, to actually see those projects on the ground. And in the next couple of slides, I'll give a brief overview of just the transit part of the plan. It's a much bigger plan. At the very end of the presentation, I have the website where you can go and check out all the other things that are included in the plan. But in terms of transit, we look at a huge range of transit services to keep our region strong with that growth. And so you can see kind of at the top level there, those are high-speed, long-range rail service. You've heard about potential service to Houston and other areas in the state or in the nation. And the range of services goes all the way to the bottom here, which is including services that help seniors or individuals with disabilities get to doctors, jobs, and other community access. So transit serves a lot of purposes. But today I'm only going to focus on the program in the green box because that is where rail service sits in our plan hierarchy. And if you have questions on the other programs or services today or at any time, please feel free to reach out to me for more information. So the Mobility 2045 recommendations are out for public comment right now through the beginning of May. We are scheduled to seek Regional Transportation Council approval in June this year. Our recommendations include the Midlothian line, which is number 9 on this map. It's the yellow line on the right side going to Duncanville.
And it ends in Cleaver?
Midlothian. Here, I'm going to show you zoomed in. I don't know if that helped or not. So we're looking, here, I'll go back. Does this have a pointer? Does not look like it has a pointer. So here, can you see my mouse moving up there?
Yeah.
Yeah, so here's the end of the dark red line at the Westmoreland station, which is southwest Dallas. Goes through Dallas and it gets to Duncanville. And I'll show you the other ones, but it goes through Cedar Hill and then Midlothian, and it ends here in Midlothian. That's where these two lines meet. This one that goes over to the west, and then this one that goes northeast to Dallas from Duncanville, and then southwest into Midlothian. And we call it the Midlothian line just because of where it terminates. Name is sort of, relative. So here's a zoomed in version, which maybe we decided is not that helpful, but again, you can see the connection from in Dallas, the Westmoreland station, through Duncanville, Cedar Hill, and then Midlothian and Alice County. This line, I mentioned, connects to a light rail line. This is proposed as a commuter rail line or a regional rail line rather than a light rail line based on cost. It is 18 miles long in the plan. It includes 6 modeled stations. I'm putting that in quotes, modeled stations. What I mean by that is our long-range plan does not actually include station level detail. We include stations as placeholders in our travel demand model, so we can figure out, what is potential ridership based on projected population and employment. But the actual specific corridor level details, including actual station locations, are determined outside of the long-range planning process through ongoing project development activities or additional studies. Again, this line is included in the plan for implementation actually in 2045 at the end of that timeline, where it's expected to cost $1.8 billion in 2045 dollars. The hypothetical stations that I talked about here, those were actually developed during an initial regional rail corridor study that was conducted about 14 years ago. So if we have any history buffs among us, this timeline shows a few key points in the planning history of the line. The concept of the line was first explored in our long-range plan, so that we looked at it in 2001, but our horizon year at that time was 2025. So in 2001, we included in the plan a staged rail in 2025 in this corridor. I mentioned the regional rail corridor study in 2004. That's where we selected sort of those modeled station locations. And in 2007 and 2009, I'll go back. This is a very, very ambitious rail program for the region, including the Midlothian line. And in 2007 and 2009, we took several attempts to the legislature to identify alternative funding mechanisms to pay for these lines, including the Midlothian line. We were unsuccessful. We were looking for options outside of the traditional sales tax funded rail systems we're familiar with. A lot of people don't have that available if they're interested in implementing rail. We were not successful, but we do continue to include this line in our long-range plan. We're hopeful that the situation will change in the future, but you'll notice that without some changing conditions, we moved the line farther in the future. So it was originally shown to be implemented in 2025. Now we're looking at it being implemented in 2045, and the future I put question marks because conditions are changing, hopefully for the positive. So the next section is going to cover the key steps and factors to help your community move that future goal line closer to today, if that's what you want to do. I'm going to step through a few points on each of these components outlined here, which is the vision, partners, and ingredients that will support implementation of rail service to Duncanville. The vision is the first component, but absolutely the most important. I'm sure you've all heard that if you don't know where you're going, there's absolutely no way you can get there. This is absolutely true for implementing public transportation service. Your community will want to consider what role it expects public transportation to play in your community. That includes in terms of access and mobility, actually getting around, but also how it impacts equity, economic development, and so forth. By solidifying this vision, your community can decide what resources are needed and what type of service will meet those needs. The point here is not to just start with the idea of rail service because it's a grand idea, but to build up to that idea based on what's important to your community. And once you know what's important, it's a lot easier to marshal the other resources. And the last bullet on the slide here is in bold. Rail service in particular requires a shared vision among many partners that are in the area of influence of a rail line. And here are some of the partners that would need to be involved in that shared vision. And as we get into more details on ingredients, which is where I'm headed next, I will be highlighting the role of 3 of these specific partners, which is local government, yourselves, transit agencies, and the Regional Transportation Council, and again, at the staff level, that's me and my colleagues at the Council of Governments. When we step through the ingredients on the next slide, you'll see these 3 pop up at the bottom, highlighting who would be involved in addressing those ingredients.
I might want to say that 2 of those we're involved in. We are represented on the Regional Transportation Council,
Right.
as well as we've done some planning local government.
Excellent point, thank you, Mayor. So what exactly needs to be accomplished to get rail service in that corridor? And I'm going to talk through 3 ingredients, 3 types of criteria: performance, implementation, and support criteria. And all of these must be addressed in one way or another, but what they look like will vary depending on what you determined in your community vision and what you want your future to look like. In terms of performance criteria, these activities are providing a set of technical recommendations and feasibility statements This is the kind of thing that transit agencies and the Council of Governments do on a regular basis to ensure that any transit service under consideration is both warranted and technically feasible. This is that kind of screen that allows something to get into the long-range plan. As I mentioned, you know, the 2004 plan and some pre-planning work is how this line even showed up in the long-range plan in the first place. If you have any specific service in mind, it's relatively easy to address these performance criteria, or at least find out what are the technical criteria. But moving beyond that technical criteria, the implementation criteria contains some of the most difficult questions that need to be answered before service is implemented. There's actually 2 slides on implementation criteria. In this first set, you'll see that local governments, transit agencies, and the Council of Governments work together on all of them. They're short bullet points, but very complex ideas. Based on the vision, communities will need to demonstrate policy support for the implementation of transit service and support for the continued evaluation of transit service. Those 2 sound relatively simple, but they're directly related to the very important demonstration of financial commitment to transit service in the corridor, particularly when you're discussing a high-cost transit investment like rail service. The importance of dedicated and long-term funding to support that investment cannot be overstated. I'll come back to the financial commitment with a case study in a few minutes, but suffice it to say, without the financial commitment, the service cannot be implemented. Partnerships are equally important, and I want to highlight an additional partner here, which is the freight railroads that own the right-of-way and control trackage rights in the corridor. And transit agencies and Council of Governments can assist local governments with developing those partnerships. You wouldn't be alone in exploring those partnerships. The second set of implementation criteria is more operational type questions about how service is implemented. As you develop a vision, you might end up deciding that rail isn't the best choice, or at least not the best choice right now based on present conditions. Implementation criteria acknowledge that it's very difficult to go from 0 to rail service, and potential iterations or interim steps include starting with some kind of service, could be high quality bus service or some kind of phased service on the rail line. Transit agencies and Council of Governments can help you explore what those options are. There are also 2 sets of these support criteria. This is where local governments really demonstrate your vision by implementing policies and programs to support the vision. The support comes in the form of initiatives that directly support transit, like transit supportive land use, economic development that depends on transit as an asset, affordable housing in and around transit stations, and a density of development that matches the type of transit service. Without these, transit service will perform poorly and in general would be really expensive compared to the benefits that you get from the service. The second set of support criteria are about like an individual's experience in accessing and using transit. They're kind of cross-discipline considerations, including air quality, bicycle pedestrian access, the general accessibility of the built environment for individuals with disabilities, and the commute habits of workers. I am going to move on to a short case study, but this slide sums up the key points to implement rail service, focusing on those partnerships among communities to make sure that the vision is shared. When local governments and the Regional Transportation Council and transit agencies are all working towards a shared vision, it will definitely be possible to identify the performance, implementation, and support criteria that I outlined. It also helps to take stock of where you are or where you consider yourselves on those criteria right now and identify where you need to be along the way towards rail service. So there is a very recent example of this process resulting in rail service in our region, which is TexRail. This rail line is under construction right now. It connects from downtown Fort Worth through several of the northern suburbs north of Fort Worth, and then terminates at DFW International Airport on the north side. And it's scheduled to be completed this December. So in this example, there was indeed a shared vision among the transit agency and local governments. They also had regional, state, and federal support. In fact, the federal share of this project covered up to 50% of the capital construction costs. I will note that the future of that specific federal funding program and the level of participation for other future rail capital projects is a bit uncertain. We got good news with the most recent omnibus bill, but the general conversation hasn't been as solid or confident. So in my perspective, it is an opportunity. We can take that uncertainty and realize it really underscores how we need to work on those strong local partnerships among agencies, so we all have a laser focus on the shared goals and the infrastructure investments that we do want, so that we can focus on those and get what's important implemented. And that would benefit multiple partners in the region. The capital cost for TexRail, I mentioned, was shared among many agencies, local, state, and federal. But the project also includes funding from Tarrant County in that case, the Regional Transportation Council, and even participation from the airport. They are building the station at Terminal B under their own cost. The operating costs will be shared among a mix of sources, including that transit sales tax, which is what's relevant for the city of Fort Worth. Grapevine has dedicated a share of their economic development sales tax towards TexRail. New alternative funding was identified by North Richland Hills. In this case, it's the increased sales and property tax created by TexRail Access, as well as other sources listed at the end here, the fares, the advertising, rentals, and investment income. The key word here is dedicated. To adequately support rail service, long-term local revenue commitments are needed. Federal funding is not much, if any, of the mix for ongoing operating costs. And when available, if there are federal funds available, they do require a local match component in order to be able to access them. All federal funds from the Transportation Department generally require that local match. So I touched on the funding here, and if I haven't gone on too long on that, someone usually asks me about what our options are for local revenue sources. So here's a very short list of potential sources of local revenue. Near the beginning of the presentation, I mentioned we've been unsuccessful in getting some additional sources. For example, an increase in the sales tax cap or increased vehicle registration fees. We took kind of a menu of what those options might look like when we went to the legislature, but we couldn't get any takers on that. But as we've seen with the TexRail example, some local revenue sources are already available without additional authority or action at the state level, and they can be used to support the implementation of rail service. The specific mix of local revenue sources can vary by project, and it could include other sources not listed here. So to wrap up, I invite you to consider the next steps that I've listed here, or maybe you thought of some additional items you'd like to pursue based on the presentation. Without champions for rail service, it will not arrive in Duncanville. A successful project will bring both public and private support and coordination. I mentioned Mobility 2045 is open for public comment. If you want to demonstrate your support for the project, you can do that now. There's the link to the website, but we're happy to work with you at any time to establish transit or mobility services that are a good fit for your community. And of course, if we don't know where we're going, we're not going to be able to get there. And I invite you to revisit the vision, the partners, and the ingredients that I touched on. The interplay of those three things is absolutely vital. And when committed partners are working towards a common goal, the vision can become a reality. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions, and this is my contact information for questions after the fact as well.
The line between Mansfield and I think it was Fort Worth, the green line, the
Yeah.
number 7, when is it due in?
So it's this in the same,
2045 also?
yep. So they're, sorry, really far back. there's a large set of 2045 rails, and that would include line 12, 11, I'm going around counterclockwise from the left.
So are they in the order, like Cotton Belt's next? I know that's been.
No, they're not in order.
Okay.
No.
So Cotton Belt is, it's.
Cottonville is, they're getting their funding pieces in order right now, soliciting, design, build contractors. That one is slated for 2022 or 2023. D2, I don't know if everyone knows what that is, but that's a, you know, a very expensive but needed capital improvement in downtown Dallas to increase the capacity of everything. It's very short.
Is that the underground?
That's the tunnel. Yep, and so that one is 2024. Also 2024 is a streetcar improvement in Dallas linking to services that aren't linked right now. So those are the next three in terms of chronology. We're seeing some additional planning work happen on the Frisco line. That moved that one a little bit closer to 2037. But everything else that's not bus on this list is 2045 because of that lack of, we're all doing this together and the state supports us and allows us to get additional funding. So right now they're all kind of sitting together in that question mark phase.
The purple line that runs down deeper into Ellis County, is that 2045 also?
Yes, the Waxahachie, we call it the Waxahachie line, but
Yeah.
yes, same thing.
What did you mean by, one of the things that would help is freight railroad? And what do you need to do with them?
So in order to operate service at all, you would negotiate to allow commuter service in the freight rail corridor. In this case, BNSF is the agency that, for the most part, has trackage. Like, they own the right-of-way, and they decide who goes on top of it. They have a very set and open process to negotiate allowing commuter rail service in their corridors, and we would work with the community, you know, to build those partnerships.
See, what you've got there is you've got commuter rail, not light rail. Commuter rail will run on the same railroad track that a train runs on. This west line now, which used to be Main Line West, is no longer anything but a switch line. DART, I'm told, owns the rail line all the way to Center Street in Maine in Duncanville. That was part of the original.
There is a chunk of it, yeah, like the northern end, when they were negotiating their red line, they negotiated a bigger chunk of the corridor, but not the whole way.
See, so what you're really talking about, working with the railroad, of course, you'd work with the railroad anyway to connect into that Westmoreland station, but what you're talking about really is the part that the railroad owns, which is from Main Street on out towards Cedar Hill.
Because that's theirs and they control it.
They do,
Yeah, but they're anxious to have the services.
yes.
Why?
Well, they can switch at night
Right.
and get good money off of it.
Well,
during
that's
the
what I'm
day.
saying, so
That's
there's
right.
money, it's
So,
money.
yeah, they would
That's
want
the answer,
as much
very short,
operation
but-
in their corridor as possible, right? I mean, they have this asset, and if there are hours where they're not using it, they absolutely would look for revenue.
And so who pays them? We do? Or
Well,
I would
no, well, the service, however it's set up, would be the one that contracting.
Part of the operating cost
You
of the
know,
line.
it's, whether we go eventually with DART or some other agency that, to operate the thing.
And if you had to work with them on that, then they would then be using it probably in the off hours, and then commuter would be.
During the day, basically, they can switch at dead of night, when the commuter rail's not running.
If they don't honk.
If they what?
Don't honk. We
Buy
bet-
zone's part of the negotiation.
Yeah. That came up a few years ago. Yeah, we have.
Yeah, the
some
several
citizens that are
million
not
dollars kind of.
Yeah, we have citizens that aren't real wild about that. You know, in the middle of the day, you know, they go, "Ah!" You know.
Anything else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Really quickly, I just wanted to thank Sarah
Yeah.
for coming and giving your presentation. And if it's the pleasure of the council, because the comment period is still open for Mobility 2045, it'd be great to have some general support from the council if it's the pleasure of the council to possibly consider a resolution at the next council meeting in support of Mobility 2045. As Sarah mentioned, this corridor has been reflected since the 2025 plan back in early 2000s, and we just want to make sure that the support for continuing to include it in the plans regionally is still there, and possible consideration of support towards the preferred locations that were identified in the comprehensive plan. As you all know, that there was some identification that if we do decide to move forward with rail, that there would need to be a further rail study to really, solidify locations based on infrastructure needs and things of that nature. So if it would be appropriate for the council to consider a resolution at your next council meeting, if that's the pleasure of the council.
Well, I think the resolution, we need to look at the total plan, don't we?
Yes, and so we can.
Because there's road components.
Absolutely, so we can certainly send a link to the plan for review, and then there's also, I don't know if we want to, how we want to handle comments as it relates to that, but yes, we can look at, send out the whole plan.
And you're saying that it probably wouldn't be ready for the next council meeting?
Well, what we saw tonight is just a small
Yeah.
part of the
It is just the
12.
transit portion that was presented tonight.
But you could also do a
They
resolution of
got bike
support.
plans.
You could also do
Yeah.
a resolution of support for the
It's
rail
just the transit.
component.
Yeah, we
of
could do that.
Mobility 2045.
Yeah.
As long as later on, they don't come back and say, oh, you voted for it, when there's part of it that was.
Well, it's just a letter of support saying we're interested in pursuing
We've
it.
had a little bit of that lately, so.
All right, thank you all. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you very much. Okay. Item number, that's all of 1 and 2. The next item is executive session. So it is now 6:45. I will adjourn this meeting. Well, this is the executive session for this meeting. We will call the executive. Order, and now I'm on here. Our first order of business tonight will be our invocation. Will be led by First United Methodist Church of Duncanville, Pastor Frank Allegero. And following that, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Will you please stand?
Let's pray. Almighty God, we give you thanks for so many things in our lives, but at this moment in this city, in these council chambers, we just take a moment to give you thanks, especially for Barbara Bush, for her life, for her legacy, for all that she has done. And even now, Lord, even now, her life continues to live on in the many, many projects and many lives she affected. So, Lord, we thank you for her and for President Bush and for her family. We pray for your comfort and your love upon them at this hour. Lord, for this city and the city council, we ask a special blessing upon Mayor Green. Just continue, Lord, to guide him as he does his travels in the next few days. But also, Lord, for this city and for all its leaders, its first responders, and those under the mantle of responsibility, grant them wisdom and strength. And as a community of faith and as a community, Lord, we just ask for so much, but you're a God, Lord, who provides so much. Bless us to be blessings, inspire us to be inspirational, and at the end of this day, Lord, all that is said and done will bring you honor and glory. For this and much more we pray in your name that is precious, amazing, life-giving, and holy. Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the In case you didn't pick up on that, we received word a while ago that Barbara Bush has passed away. So, as Pastor Frank said, we all want to be in prayer for the family and remember the good things that she did, which were abundantly clear to most of us. Council member reports. Seeing none, city manager report.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I would like to ask Assistant Police Chief Mark Lavigny to come up. He wants to recognize one of our police officers with a life-saving bar.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I would like to call Officer Andrew Pachaka to the podium. And I would like to describe to the council and the mayor and the citizens what Andrew Pachaka will be receiving this life-saving bar for. His actions on the night of February 13, 2018 at approximately 9:47 p.m. as Duncanville police officers responded were dispatched to Papados at the 800 East Highway 67 Service Road, Duncanville, Dallas County, Texas. Reference to a shooting with injury call. Dispatch advised they received multiple calls advising of several shots being fired, possibly 2 gunshot victims and the shooter possibly still being on the location. It should be noted that the Papados was celebrating Fat Tuesday, which is a day known for large celebration consisting of drinking alcohol and eating. In addition to Fat Tuesday, it was the day before Valentine's. At the time of this call, it was estimated 300 patrons were on location. When Officer Pachaka arrived on location, he found a victim on the bench just outside the front doors. Officer Pachaka quickly identified the victim had been shot somewhere in his upper left arm, but due to the amount of blood present, he could not observe the exact location of the wound. In addition, simply elevating and applying pressure was having zero positive effect of blood loss. Through departmental training regarding tourniquet application and when a tourniquet is needed, Officer Pachaka immediately recognized the victim was suffering from an arterial bleeding due to the copious amounts of bright red blood coming from the wound. Due to the fact that the arterial bleed is fatal if not treated immediately, Officer Pachaka quickly retrieved his department-issued tourniquet and applied it to the victim's arm, which prevented the loss of more blood. Another victim was found, and both victims were transported to Methodist Central Hospital for further treatment. Once at the hospital, the victim treated by Officer Pachaka was rushed into emergency surgery to stop the arterial bleeding in his left arm. It was learned the victim had lost considerable amounts of blood and required a blood transfusion to preserve his life. And again, I would like to recognize and thank you, Officer Pachaka, for your life-saving efforts on this night.
Item number 2 are proclamations and presentations. And the first proclamation tonight will be one recognizing April the 25th, 2018 as Sister City Day. And the second one will be one for the National Volunteer Week, April the 15th through the 21st for the National Volunteer Week. So At this time, I'm going to ask Marion Duhan. George, you come on down with her too. Well, you might have heard by now that we've got a delegation going over to our sister city. We're going tomorrow. So we'll leave about 2:30 in the afternoon on Lufthansa, if I can ever get my boarding pass. Still trying to get that worked out. But anyway, we'll be there for 10 days. And we've got a lot of activity to cover in 10 days. And you might wonder why April the 25th is the date that we've got on this proclamation. April the 25th is Liberation Day for the Italians. This was the day that we liberated Italy from Germany. It's like the 4th of July for the Italians. And so there's a big celebration that day, and they wanted us to be there for that. They told us 3 things. One of my other trips over there. Number one, they love Americans, and they love Americans because we liberated them. We taught them to grow crops, and we gave them the Marshall Plan. So those 3 things, they continue to love us, and we have a warm relationship with our sister city over there, and we look forward to this trip, which will begin tomorrow. So I've asked Marion, who's on our committee, our sister city committee, as well as she and her husband, George, will be part of the delegation flying over to Lufthansa. Hope y'all are checked in. Anyway, I prepared this proclamation. We actually will present it over in ceremony in Italy, but I've asked her to receive it tonight. The proclamation reads, whereas in March of 1997, the city of Duncanville began discussions with the city of Monastrola di Savigliano in the province of Cuneo, Italy, to establish a sister city relationship. And whereas in March 1997, the city of Duncanville welcomed Monastrola Mayor Antonio Bracciato and other distinguished Italian visitors to our city. And in July 1998, Duncanville Mayor Glenn Repp and other citizens of Duncanville reciprocated the visit to the city of Monastrola. And whereas in June 1998, the cities of Duncanville and Monastrola di Savigliano formally agreed to a mutual sister city relationship and committed to maintaining a friendship between the cities. And whereas in the 20 years this relationship has been in existence, delegations of citizens from both cities have exchanged visits and enjoyed old friendships and made new friendships. And whereas on this day, in solemn assembly, we celebrate our 20th anniversary of the relationship between the city of Duncanville and Monastrola di Savigliano, and once again affirm our friendship. Now therefore I, David L. Green, Mayor of the city of Duncanville, Texas, do hereby proclaim Wednesday, April the 25th, 2018, as Sister City Day in the city of Duncanville, Texas, and urge all citizens to help promote world peace and understanding by extending a great big Texas welcome to our Italian friends. This will be presented on that day to them. And then we're traveling up to the which would be, in our terms, the state government, where the president of that area will be present, and we'll present a plaque in commemoration of the same thing to him. It's the Piemonte area, Piedmont area. Cuneo is the county. So that's what we'll be doing part of the time when we're on the trip. But I did want to read that tonight to all of you and tell you that we will be presenting that on the 25th MO there. Mary?
It's gonna be beautiful. When they come here, they're so happy. They want cowboy hats and all this kind of stuff. And they're just very, very, they've come 3 times and they're like family. They're like family.
We will be staying in their homes. We don't stay in a hotel, we'll stay in their homes with the families. They will be escorting us around, and we'll take various bus trips around the entire state, as we would call it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Volunteers and all they do to support the core mission of the library and make the library an open, welcoming, and supportive environment for every member of the Duncanville community. And now, therefore, I, David L. Green, Mayor of the City of Duncanville, Texas, do hereby proclaim National Volunteer Week, April 15th through the 21st, 2018, and urge my fellow citizens to join the effort and honor the unsung heroes in our community. By volunteering and recognizing those who served, we can connect with our entire community.
Thank you very much. We do love our volunteers very much, and my staff up here all work very closely with our volunteers. So if we could go ask, we'd like to say a few words.
Our volunteers help us every day with tasks like shelving, with our displays, processing new materials, and various projects and events like Operation Clean Duncanville, Sweep It Out, and especially Food Bash. They help the library to shine and help staff be successful and look good. I can't thank our volunteers enough for their dedicated service to our community. 2 of our volunteers who come in every week are here, and Lauren Parker, and they help me immensely. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Item number 3 on our agenda is our citizens' input period, and I would like to remind those who do speak that you're to give your name and address for the those captions.
Item 4A, consider the minutes for the April 3rd, 2018 City Council regular meeting. Item 4B, consider a resolution authorizing the purchase of fuel products from Martin Eagle Oil Company, Inc. through Tarrant County Contract Number 2018-057 for the unit price discounts bid with an estimated expenditure of $352,000. Item 4C, consider a resolution authorizing the procurement of cellular services from Cellco Partnership, DBA Verizon Wireless, through the Texas Department of Information Resources contract number DIR-TSO-3415 in the estimated expenditure amount of $54,000.
Council, you've heard the captions read. The chair will entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Will you please vote? Okay, thank you very much. Item number 5, item A, consider amending ordinance 2318, section 2, the number authorized civil service classified firefighter position from 33 to 37.
Mayor, Council, good evening. Greg Chase, Assistant Fire Chief. Thank you for having me this evening. What we'd like to do is to amend the ordinance number 2318, which sets the classified positions of the fire department and the police department, but particularly we're talking about the fire department in line F6, which is the firefighter position. We would like to raise that from 33 to 37. The 4 that we would like to add would be unfunded, so therefore we would not need, we're not asking for any more money. What we're trying to do is, during the last quarterly report, we were proud to report that we were fully staffed. About a week after that, we had a retirement. When that happened, we finished out that civil service eligibility list. We were not able to hire anybody, and we had to start over again. Once we got into that process, we have a we have that one vacancy. We have a captain that's been with the city for 36 years. He's turned in his letter of retirement, going to retire June the 21st. We have paramedic school starting on June the 4th. I would like to get somebody in that paramedic school to keep this process going. We're trying to be proactive in our approach to doing this, and to be able to do that, I need to increase the number of classified positions. I cannot go over 33. If I hire that one to take the vacancy spot and then a couple of weeks later I have a retirement, I would like to go ahead and pre-hire ahead of him. Now, what I'd like to show you in the top right-hand corner is a little difficult to see, but our turnover rate, we lose about, history says 20 years. For the past 20 years, we lose about 4.5 to 5 people each year. Doesn't matter retirements, going to other departments, they may resign, and we also may have them, usually the terminations are due to failure of paramedic school. The reason we take so long in our hiring process, if you look down at the bottom, our hiring process takes about 4 months. We have to post the civil service exam for about 4 weeks. We give an written entrance exam and a physical agility test. We take the top 15 off of that. We take 2 weeks to do the personal history statements and do the background checks. We do another interview boards that takes about 2 weeks due to scheduling. We do chief's interviews and then polygraph, psychological, medical assessments, and then we allow the employee or the applicant to give 2 weeks notice to their previous employee. By the time they get on board, it's been about 4 months. Now, if you look up to the left of the chart where the timeline goes into effect, we post the civil service exam. Our hiring process, that 3 to 4 months, on-shift training, which the police talked about this the other day. When they get out of school and they come to Duncanville, they have more training to do so they can learn how Duncanville does it. That's the same way we do. We can't have an employee start, not know where anything is on the truck, know how we operate, know how to operate on the fire ground, different emergency situations, and not know where anything is on the equipment. So that process takes about 2 months, and then paramedic school will take about 7 months. So the entire process, when we hire somebody to where they're a fully functioning firefighter or paramedic with the city of Duncanville, is about 13 months. Over the past 15 years or so, we've had these 4 to 5 people leave. We've been replacing them with 2 to 3. Starting last June, we had 4 new hires we sent to paramedic school. We had 4 more, and we had another paramedic school starting in October. We sat down with the crews because this is fixing to be a big hit on our personnel. We had 8 people in paramedic school at the same time. We also had 2 out with back injuries, and also we had a new hire that had started in October. He didn't count for another 2 months. So we were down about 20% of our personnel on the street. What this will allow us to do with the up to 4 is get them in the process of going. Now, when Captain Leith retires in June, if you allow us to hire 2 of them, it will probably be the end of May. So as far as the timeline goes, Captain Leith with his salary at $84,200, when he retires, we'll have put out $63,156 on his salary. We'll still have left over for the remaining budget year of $21,052. When we promote the that's the wrong slide. We had adjusted our slides, and I apologize, that is not the one I was looking at. Let me refresh that real quick. Basically, what's going to happen is when we promote somebody, that salary of the lower, he's topped out. When he is at the top level, our new hire, or our newly promoted captain will be at the first level. There's about 4 steps in between them. That's going to save us, or not save us, but we won't pay out $2,000 in that salary. The firefighter that retired in January, we have not been able to fill that position, so we've had about $25,000 in the leftover salary that we haven't paid out. If we're able to hire these 2, they'll count for the rest of the budget year together about $34,000. So altogether, we're going to be not paying out from our budget year of fiscal year 18 of about $12,000. That is the reason we don't need the money. We just need the position so we can be proactive in our approach to filling these positions. The benefits of doing that is going to reduce our overtime budget. We don't have to backfill. It reduces the strain of the mandatory overtime. I know Chief Brown talked about the mandatory where they call people in. We don't let them go home. Once they finish their shift, if we have mandatory, if nobody signed up for the overtime and they have to stay, they do not go home unless they can find somebody to work for them. So they will work a 48-hour shift. They are allowed to go home after that, and then we'll start the process over again. And we're just trying to be proactive in maintaining our staffing levels. We were full for a short period of time. We'd like to get back there, and I appreciate your consideration in amending that.
Greg, if I understand that right, what you're trying to do is if you know you're going to have a retirement coming up, you'll go ahead and start the process to cut the length of time between having somebody new come on board and the retirement.
Yes, sir, and I failed to mention that. Well, that's the biggest part. If we have a letter in hand saying that they're going to retire or they're going to resign, what have you, they turn it into the chief under civil service rules. Once he accepts that, they can't take it back. That's happened in the recent past. Somebody resigned and a couple of days later said, "No, I was just kidding. No, too bad. You're out of a job. You have to reapply." What this is going to be, once we have that letter in hand, it's going to be an agreement between the city manager and the fire chief. I do have a vacancy. I have a letter in hand, and I have David's letter, or Chief Rhodey has it, and he deployed at Hurricane Harvey, and on his 6th day of deployment, he said, "Is it June 21st yet?" He's waiting. He's counting. He's guaranteed to go. He's turned his letter in. And when that happens, they're going to agree, yes, this meets all the requirements. You can hire somebody. And that way, we don't have to go back through city council to prolong it another 2 weeks or to get it on agenda another month and push it back like that. It's an agreement, and that's why we're asking for the unfunded positions.
Sounds like a smoother way to do it.
Thank you.
I move to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Are there any further comments or questions?
Me.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
I want to say, Assistant Chief Chase, we appreciate your proactive approach. This seems like the way, and oh, Chief Brody's here. Did you just come in? I didn't see you. That's wonderful that you are looking forward and getting it done and keeping it maintained, and we appreciate that, and I know citizens do, and that's the way to do it. Good management. Good for you.
Seeing no further lights, will you please vote? Thank you very much. Item number 5B is to consider a resolution authorizing implementation of a retention and stability bonus policy to reduce employee attrition. Chief?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for allowing us to bring this item back before you for a second time. If you recall, on March the 20th, I presented a PowerPoint presentation outlining the steps involving our retention and stability proposal to you. This is an issue that was recommended to us by the Duncanville Police Association to help us address vacancies within the Duncanville Police Department. And if you'll recall, we talked about police officer vacancies not being unique to the City of Duncanville Police Department. We showed you information where there are vacancies in Best Southwest police agencies, agencies throughout the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, and this is also challenges police agencies across the nation. And what we are hoping to do is we're hoping to use a two-pronged approach to address police officer vacancies in the Duncanville Police Department. We outlined the recruitment strategies and all the things that we are doing to recruit police officers, but we also feel that your best recruitment is to retain the quality officers that we currently have. And so what we are presenting to you this evening is what we believe is an innovative idea that will help us retain quality police officers within our police department. And just real briefly, I would like to recap the steps of the recruitment and retention bonus. First of all, to be eligible for the retention and bonus, you must be a sworn police officer employed by the City of Duncanville at least one consecutive year as of October 1st of the current fiscal year. The bonus would only be in effect if greater than 4 vacancies average for that fiscal year. Newly authorized positions shall not count as vacant positions for the first 12 months following the City Council authorization. Bonuses will be paid from 1/2 the cost savings incurred during the previous fiscal year from unfilled budgeted position of police officers. And then there's a calculation, and there are personnel costs that will be taken from the overall amount that would be considered for the officers. And the individual bonus, the total amount would be divided by the eligible officers minus applicable retirement, TMRS, as well as FLICA taxes. And so what we are asking this governing body to do this evening is to please consider this resolution that we believe will help us retain quality police officers that we have currently in our department. And I'll be happy to entertain any questions that you may have.
Councilwoman Thomas.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move to approve this with an amendment on Section 2, and it doesn't change anything, just makes it more specific. It's bringing the whereases down to the be it resolved part. So the amendment would be at the end of Section 2 to read, the first payment under this policy shall be made on or after October 1st, 2018 from fiscal year 2017 savings.
You've got the...
Yes, Mayor, and also for point of clarification, if Ms. Thomas would accept, I've added the words Duncanville Police Department to that too, so it's a little bit more focused. It's clear that the whereas clauses do that, but just so it's specific to the police department.
Okay, you offered an amendment. With the amendment and the
I second.
the language that the city attorney has. Okay, there's a motion and a second. Councilwoman Jameson.
I'm not going to be voting for this. I was looking in a magazine, Texas Monthly, and Zena Stevens, who is the sheriff, she was elected the sheriff November 8th. She's the chief of police at Prairie View A&M University and was elected sheriff of Jefferson County in Southeast Texas, the state's first female African-American sheriff. And I was reading her article, and she was talking about the issue of recruiting and maintaining. And she said she travels to She's going to historically black colleges and trying to get students to consider going into law enforcement. And she said that she's hoping that with her being elected sheriff, she could change the views that young people in general, not just African Americans, have about law enforcement. And anyway, she goes on to talk about how she is actively going to the colleges and trying to encourage them and to come out and join the department. And I just thought, when we do this retention bonus, it does not address the hiring, the retirement. I looked at some of the places that you were advertising, the Focus newspaper. I mean, I think, and then I guess I wasn't anticipating, you know, the fire department, but I appreciate the fact that they're aggressively going after it and getting people. And I realize they don't have the same stigmatism that police officers have right now, but I just don't think this is the answer. And I also heard from my district, from a lot of people, and they were not pleased with the way that this was being handled. See some people nodding. We've got to do something else. This isn't working. And just taking the money that wasn't used for the officers that aren't there and handing it out is not the answer. We got to do something much more radical, much more aggressive. We got to do it, because not all cities are unable to have a full department. We got to figure out what the problem is and fix it. We got to do it.
Councilwoman Thomas.
Thank you, Mayor. I know that many of y'all will agree with me that we are in unusual times. And the chief shared with us that when he went to his Chiefs Association meeting, that nationwide applications for policemen are down 90%. That's the times we are in. And this obviously won't fix the hiring and the firing issue. But what it does is it shows appreciation for the last year, when we're in this unusual time of showing appreciation to our officers who have to come in. They're getting paid overtime. But this is not what this is about. This is about them missing their kids' baseball game and their parents' 50th wedding anniversary and their 25th wedding anniversary and their kids' birthday party and their kids' plays and their families' picnics. This is, or when they're just tired and they don't want to come in, but it's mandatory overtime and they have to come in. This is showing their appreciation to those people who put themselves on the line, who have to be at the top of their game every single second that they're out on the street. They're not sitting behind a desk with their feet up. They're on point, and they're on point for us, and this is showing our appreciation to them. I appreciate what the policemen do. Just last 2 nights ago, we had an incident on our block, and I haven't told you about it, but the policeman came out, handled it professionally, at the same time that they had another call where there was a crisis, and it's a young guy, and he's having to make decisions about how do I resolve this quickly and professionally and do what's right, but yet get over there to help the other police officer that's in trouble. And so that's what they deal with. So I wholeheartedly support this to show appreciation to our police. It's not costing the city any money. It's budgeted, and it's half of what was budgeted. And it seems to me that, the Bible, Jesus says the laborer is worthy of his hire. And it seems to me that this is in that spirit.
One of the things I would like to comment on, yes, there is a hiring crisis, continues to be there. I think that we've attacked it in multiple ways, but this is not about hiring, this is about retention. So better to retain an officer who's trained than it is to have to go out and hire a new one, so I'm all for it. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to point out too that Chief Brown has talked before about the efforts that we are making at recruiting new police officers, and we have made a lot of efforts in doing that. But at the same time, you know, we've explained the process. It's very similar to what the firefighters discussed in their process. But we're not going to lower our standards in what we select for a police officer. That is not fair to the men and women of the police department here to hire at a lower standard. And it's certainly not a wise move in the long run for this city or for this community. So we're going to maintain the standards that we have always held in hiring police officers, and we will always continue to work to recruit new police officers, and we want to retain the ones that we have. The ordinance that was passed for the fire department tonight, we will do the same thing for the police department when we get to the point where it makes sense to do that. We're not at that point yet.
Okay, seeing no further questions, thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you, sir.
Do we have a motion on the floor? Yes, yes, we do. Okay, seeing no further lights, will you please vote? Okay, thank you very much. Item number 5C is to consider a resolution funding the Encore Electric Delivery Company, LLC, application for approval of a distribution cost recovery factor pursuant to 16 Texas Administration Code 25.243 to increase distribution rates within the city should be denied, finding that the city's reasonable rate case expenses should be reimbursed by the company, finding that the meeting at which this resolution is passed is open to the public and required by law, requiring notice of this resolution to the company and legal counsel.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Richard Summerlin, Finance Director. This particular application was filed on April the 5th, 2018 by Encore. And in this filing, they're seeking an increase in distribution revenues of a little over $19 million. And the Encore City Steering Committee, we've engaged the services of a consultant, Mr. Carl Nalipa, to review the company's filing. He will review that filing and identify adjustments that should be made to the company's request. And so this resolution tonight denies that rate increase until Mr. Nalepa has time to study this and bring back recommendations to the Encore steering cities.
And Richard, how many cities are involved in this one?
I believe there, I don't have an exact account, but there are over 32 cities in all, somewhere north of 32 cities.
Questions? Okay, seeing none, please vote.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Will you please vote? Okay, thank you. Item number D is to take any necessary action as a result of the executive session, and there was action taken.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, as a result of the executive session as posted on the agenda, I would ask the Council to consider the following motion. A motion to accept the offer of Duncanville Independent School District for the City of Duncanville to purchase approximately 4.69 acres of real property and improvements located at 730 East Interstate, Duncanville, Texas, in the amount of $900,000. And to authorize the city attorney to draft an appropriate buy-sell agreement and authorize the city manager to execute the same, subject to the funding by the Duncanville Community and Economic Development Corporation.
For our audience, that's the old Toyota property. So, Chair will entertain a motion.
I move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Councilwoman Jameson.
This property, the old Toyota dealership originally was given to the school system by the owner because they were paying about $60,000 a year in taxes. And I'm not real thrilled that we're having to buy it from them when they got it given to them, but it's kind of taking money out of one pocket and putting it in another one. We had some discussion, and I think the consensus now, and I know that the council's changing, we're losing our CPA, Mr. Rutherford, that was also talking about the money, because we need to make sure this time that we're very careful about what happens to that piece of property, because unfortunately, we've had some not so great ideas in the past. So what it does is it gives us control of the property, and making sure that it doesn't go in a direction that, as a city, we don't want. But I think that everyone should be involved in making sure that this goes to something that we really want. This is economic development money, so that's the pocket it's coming out of. We still will have to do some tearing down of buildings, and there's asbestos, so it's going to cost some more. We're going to try to recoup as much of it as we can from a developer. And I think the main thing is that we all stay on task as to what exactly we as a city want right there, and not just run out there and slap something, without a full and thoughtful process about where we're going, what we're doing, because that is a real important piece of property right there at the beginning of coming into Duncanville. And I would just like to see all of us slow down, think about it, and decide exactly what we want, not just put something there. I am one that does not believe any economic development is good at economic development. I think it should be a thoughtful process, and it should be something that the citizens also could benefit from, as well as making money.
Seeing no further lights, will you please vote? Thank you. Item number 6A, is to receive the fire department's quarterly report.
Good evening, council, mayor, city manager. I want to thank y'all for having the fire department come do our second quarter report, so we'll get right into it. I want to talk about staffing. Last quarter, if y'all recall, we had a full house. We had full staffing in the fire department, which really pleased me. But then about a week later, we had a retirement. So now we're in the process of trying to fill that vacancy. Pardon me? That's the whole one. Yeah, the other one's, the new one's a lot longer than that one.
That looks tall enough.
Where was it? Oh, we had the vacancy that we're trying to fill, and we tried to fill it off of our existing our civil service exam, and we were unable to fill it, so we had to schedule another exam, which took place on March 24th. After we did the exam, we had the guys come in, and we took 15 of the top 50 on the list, and we had 12 that passed, and then we had 9 that turned in their packets. We have been reviewing those packets since April the 6th, and we're going to take those 9 candidates and bring them in for an interview on April the 30th and May the 3rd. Hopefully we can get a candidate that we can fill that one position. I'm really happy about our guys that are in paramedic school. As Assistant Chief talked about, this is the final 4 that we have in paramedic school, and they're going over in DeSoto, and they are currently out of the actual classroom part of it, and they're doing the ride-outs They have to do 10 ride-outs to be able to complete paramedic school, and then they'll do their testing, and then we can get them back at the station, and we can start getting them through the process, and we can use them for staffing. So that'll bump my staffing as far as usable staffing by 4, which is a big plus for us. There's our reason for our vacancy. This young man, Steve Bryant, he was a firefighter paramedic, and he gave the city of Duncanville and the fire department 25 years of service to the fire department. We did our Quint dedication on February the 8th, which we had a good turnout. It was a good ceremony, and we dedicated that truck, or we memorialized that truck to one of our previous firefighters who had a medical disability that he had to retire on, and he wound up passing on, and we memorialized him on that truck. And as you can see, as a tradition in the fire service, we like to wash that truck down, get it all dried off and everything, and it's a tradition for the firefighters to push that back into the bay. And once they get that into the bay, that signifies that truck's ready to roll and protect the city of Duncanville. Mike Ryan, our EMS division chief, went down to our service center, and he taught 41 of the employees down there CPR. He also taught 17 of them first aid, and we put together a first aid kit, and they now have that first aid kit hanging above the AED that's located down on the wall down at the service center to protect our employees down there. And just a side note that that class that Mike Ryan puts on is worth about $100 per person. So Mike saved the service center in the city of Duncanville $4,100. We try to use our internal sources to save that kind of money. He's next on the list. He's going to go into the police department and teach them first aid in CPR. We come up with we're really health conscious down at the fire department. We've developed a wellness and fitness program, which has really built up the morale in the station, and we're trying to keep records. It's even cut down on a lot of our sick time. But we require every one of our fire personnel to go through the physical agility tests that we require all of our new candidates to complete. And every one of our firefighters passed it on the very first time. So that was a pretty good accomplishment for the fire department, for them all to make sure that they passed it that first time. Then also we make sure all of our firefighters get a mandatory medical assessment, which goes in, they do a stress test and cardiac, checking for cardiac issue, blood work and all that kind of stuff. And all of our guys passed that medical assessment. So I was real happy that we all passed that assessment. And they hugely wound up giving us for the department, a superior. So our firefighters, you can guarantee they're in good shape and they're ready to do the job. In our regional fire training, we brought in Don Abbott. He's a renowned fire service specialist throughout the nation. And our EDUC partners, we all put our money in together to have this guy come down and give us training issues. One of the deals that he taught us was big box training, which is, for instance, like a Walmart, Winco, Costco, one of your big box stores, about how to attack one of those fires. And believe it or not, those stores do catch on fire. He showed us several videos of Walmarts and Targets and Best Buys and stuff that have been on fire across the nation. So it was a real learning experience for a lot of our officers. And then we had a Mayday training. The same guy, he's responsible for going and doing investigations throughout the nation on Maydays. And he gave us a lot of good pointers, 16 pointers on if the communication comes through, that statement is made, then you know you're fixing to have a Mayday. So again, it was a good learning experience for our guys in improving our communications. Then another thing we're trying to do, we're going through Blue Card program, which is another nationally recognized program. Our assistant chief, battalion chief, 6 captains, 6 engineers are all Blue Card certified now. And what that was a part is in our work plan is part of our succession planning objective. So the program, what it does is it takes our command officers and it standardizes our local and regional incident operations across all of our organizations. So in other words, if we have a fire in Cedar Hill or DeSoto, we're all operating on the same lingo when we go up there and fight those fires, which results in firefighter safety. We also received an emergency management grant of $85,000 for the 4 cities. And what this will involve is that we're going to develop a debris management plan. If y'all recall, we have developed an emergency management plan. So the next step is to do a debris management plan. And basically what that involves is a vendor or a third party coming in and evaluating in Duncanville where a good place to take debris, to organize it and get it out of here, and how to our public information officer give them information about how we'll separate those goods in case there's a tornado or an event that we need to remove a lot of debris. As you remember, we have a contract for debris removal, and we also have a contract for debris monitoring. So this is the next natural step, is to have a plan for that removal. We also have finished up our Southwest Emergency Management Plan, and we wound up making sure all of our key personnel in all 4 of the cities have a copy of that plan so that we all know what they're accountable for in each one of their departments. And then we have to go in there and we exercise that emergency operations plan. We'll do an exercise simulating a tornado so each one of our directors and staff can get used to how this plan operates and how we operate throughout the city. And then this is something I'm kind of proud of. In the Southwest, best Southwest cities, the VFW goes in and recognizes some of our top personnel. And this year they recognized 2 of our firefighters. Firefighter of the year was Sean Brown, and paramedic of the year Brent Neighbors. And they came down and presented these 2 firefighters with recognition. Just give y'all an idea of our stats for this next quarter. We ran 1,764 calls. If you look, our fire-related calls for service were 32. We had 15 building fires. Other related calls for service was 449. And then our major event is our EMS calls for service is 1,268. And then our fire marshal and fire inspector did 229 certificate of occupancy inspections, regular structural commercial inspections, and then re-inspections. And that's the end of my report. If you have any questions? All right, thank y'all for y'all's support.
Thank you. Item number 6B is to receive the monthly financial report as of February the 28th, 2016.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. So at the end of February, our benchmark is about 42% of our revenues and expenditures. We ended February with $16.1 million in fund balance in the general fund. That's 195 days of operations, and about $9.9 million in excess of our 75-day fund reserve. Property tax payments were at 96% of the budget. That's not unusual for this time of year. We tend to collect the money up front for the property taxes, which is our major revenue source, and then we spend that down as we go through the remainder of the months of the fiscal year. Sales tax revenue is about 6% higher than the same time last year, and that reflects 3 months of data so far. You look at the standard graph that I present every month, with the purple line being the 2018 budget on a straight line, and then the 3-year average is the blue line, and then the red line's the actuals that we've achieved so far. And so you see our revenues are well above the 3-year average. And laser that out and look at our property taxes, you see that steep increase from November through February, which is, again, the time when we're receiving property taxes, and then that flattens off. There's not a whole lot of revenue that comes in except for sales tax through the remainder of the year. We look at our expenditures, you can see that the red line charted out that we started a little bit above the straight line budget. Now we've come down in January to be right on target with that, and then in February we dropped just slightly below that straight line budget. So we're in good shape there. If we look at the utility fund, the ending unreserved fund balance was $7.4 million, which represents 144 days of operations, about $4.3 million or 76 days, so above our 60-day reserve. And of course, we're always 1 month behind due to the billing process on our revenues, and so there's only 4 months of revenue that are reflected at the present. And so you see that our revenue's slightly above that 3-year average. And then our expenditures also are a little bit, they've stayed right along that 3-year average, and then we had a little bit of a slight increase during January and February, but we're still below that straight line overall year budget. And then finally, we have the innovation funds. We've pretty much completed the park master plan and replaced the conference room chairs. Those 2 projects are highlighted in yellow. They're finished, and then we have quite a few other projects that are still open. And with that, I'll answer any questions.
Seeing none, thank you very much. This completes our agenda items, so at this time, we will stand adjourned at 8:11. Oops. Oh, I'm sorry. Whoa.
I just want to make one comment.
Okay, go ahead.
This isn't really a question, but about a month ago when the audit committee met with the auditors, one of the things they told us that there were no during their audit there were no significant adjustments to the financial statements, which what that means to me is that every month when we look at these financial statements, I guess you could say they're good numbers. We don't get to the end of the year and find out that what Richard was telling us every month was wrong, and there's big adjustments at the end. So, Richard, I think that's just a good compliment to you and your department. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, it's 8:11. We stand adjourned.